Morning everybody. So today we're going to be working on the build-up and the problem which is on our planning sheet. So to begin with, what we'd like you to do is look back at yesterday's work and the paragraph that you wrote yesterday and just take a few minutes to reread what you've put and check it for any mistakes or anything that you want to improve. So you can pause this video whilst you take a look, and then you can keep watching. Obviously the sorts of things you need to be looking for is, if you read it through, the day that Alex, I can see here that Alex has got an A, it's a lowercase a, so I need to change that to a capital. And Alex in my story is a boy, so therefore I need to change that. The day that Alex thought he saw a gnome was the first day of spring. There's no full stop at the end there. It was hiding in the garden at the front of the house. At first, he noticed the shadow. I think I might add something there, strange shadow. At first, he noticed the strange shadow. Then he felt as though someone was watching him. Finally, he heard strange giggling in the distance. Alex crouched down and carefully peered. I've missed an E there in my peered. Into the darkness of a nearby bush. He caught a glimpse of the gnome's face. I've missed an apostrophe there because the face belongs to the gnome. Amongst its beard, tiny mice were nesting and eating cheese. He could see caterpillars crawling and butterflies fluttered around the gnome's grey hair. So I can see here that fluttered, I've spelt fluttered wrong. And the gnome's grey hair, so I need an apostrophe there because it belongs to the gnome. Alex stopped, stepped back and waited. There was a strange fizzing noise and a blinding flash from inside the bush, and when Alex dared to peek back inside, it had disappeared. So that reads okay. I've checked it to make sure for my mistakes, and I've added maybe a couple of words I could put there that it had strangely or unusually or weirdly disappeared. Strangely, I've used strange up here, so I'm going to put unusually. It had unusually disappeared. Okay, so pause this video, check back through your work and just make sure that you've got everything, you're happy with what you've put so far. Okay, so in today's book, in today's work, you are going to work on the build-up and the problem. This is the original story that we were learning, and this is my plan here, and this is what I'm going to adapt into here today. So I can see that in my plan I put as usual instead of course, so I'm going to change the of course to as usual. As usual, nobody believed him. His mum thought, if I look here, his mum thought he'd seen a squirrel. So his mum thought he had seen a squirrel. His dad, in my plan I put, was too busy to listen to what Alex was saying. His dad was too busy to listen to what Alex, capital A, was saying. Only, so in the original story it was only Waldo believed her. I've put only Jess believed. So only Jess believed him. Now I might add something there. Only, I'm going to put only his best friend Jess believed him. Only his best friend Jess believed him. So then the second part of the story today, so the problem. That summer they often saw the giant. Now obviously ours isn't about a giant, and it wasn't set in summer, it was set in spring. So let's change that. That spring they often saw the gnome and it wasn't standing in the park rooted to the spot. In my plan down here, I've said that it was hiding in the park like a statue, like a garden gnome statue, and running around gardens at night. So I'm going to change all of that. So they often saw the gnome hiding in the, I'm going to put local park, hiding in the local park, could be in the nearby park, stuck to the ground rather than rooted to the ground. Like a tiny stone statue. Running around the gardens at night when, rather than saying when the coast is clear, I'm going to say when everyone was asleep. When everyone was asleep. So you can see I've started to change my story. That spring they often saw the gnome hiding in the local park, stuck to the ground like a tiny stone statue, running around the gardens at night when everyone was asleep. So rather than saying people up and down the street, I'm going to use the word neighbours down the street. Neighbours down the street complained about their garden ornaments being kicked over. I don't think a gnome's a bit small. I don't think a gnome could trample a garden, but it could definitely kick some things over in the garden, couldn't it? So around the street complained about their garden ornaments being kicked over. Let's get rid of that. Garden ornaments being kicked over. And what else could we have? So we could have tiny footprints. Rather than strange dents in cars, we could have tiny footprints going all over the cars, couldn't we? So the gnome could be crawling over them. So tiny, muddy footprints. Tiny, muddy footprints appeared over people's cars. All over people's cars, and flower beds were pulled up. And destroyed. Everyone had a story. How do you get rid of, well, it's not a giant, it's a gnome, so how do you get rid of nuisance or naughty gnomes? Nuisance gnomes. How do you get rid of naughty gnomes? So we've got Alex and Jess, because it wasn't Waldo. Now they could go to the library, they could go and ask somebody, but I'm going to get them to check things out on the internet. I imagine that's what they would try and do nowadays. Alex and Jess checked out the internet. So there they discovered it was probably a garden gnome, maybe. or perhaps a rare wild gnome. Perhaps a rare wild gnome. They designed or they researched traps. They researched traps and discussed, well, they could dig a deep pit for a gnome if they wanted to, but they could put maybe a net or something to catch it, and discussed hiding nets around the garden. Okay, so I'm going to have a read through and just check it against what I've put here. So as usual, nobody believed him. His mum thought he had seen a squirrel. His dad was too busy to listen to what Alex was saying. Only his best friend Jess believed him. That spring they often saw the gnome hiding in the local park, stuck to the ground like a tiny stone statue, running around the gardens at night when everyone was asleep. Neighbours, so this is why you check it, because I can see that I've spelt neighbours wrong there. So neighbours down the street complained about their garden ornaments being kicked over. Tiny muddy footprints appeared all over people's cars. Flower beds were pulled up and destroyed. Everyone had a story. How do you get rid of nuisance gnomes? Alex and Jess checked out the internet. There they discovered it was probably a garden gnome or perhaps a rare wild gnome. They researched traps and discussed hiding nets around the garden. So today you need to be adapting this part from your plan that you have written, and I have given you a copy or an example of my story with some highlighted parts that you can be adapting that should link to your plan. Okay, so give it a go, and then tomorrow we'll be editing the next section. Good luck.